Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show, it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Equalizer. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I do like that the story is kind of split the way it is. Obviously, which using that term is actually it represents the story full circle, because the title of this episode is Separated, and we're dealing with obviously Mel being separated from Harry, but also a mother, Alma, coming to Robin and Mel for help because she was separated from her son a year ago. Basically, they came into the country illegally trying to seek asylum, but that was around the time that whole thing was happening here in the U.S. where families were being separated from their children, you know. And I don't know why, it almost feels unreal that was like a point in our history when that happened. So, but nevertheless, in the grand scheme of things, obviously Mel and Robin and Bishop are trying to do everything they can. Especially Robin and Bishop, they're putting in all the favors to try to make this happen. Even Robin's like, I went to the CIA. I offered to come back to work with them, but even they don't even want to touch this situation. Even they can't help. No matter how bad they'd want me back, they still can't do anything with this because, like, the government doesn't want to let him go. He dropped a lot of secrets. Granted, even Bishop was meeting like with a general or whatever later, and he was like, you know, it's like, right, he didn't give away anything really bad. He just exposed the war crimes, and he's just like, yeah, because it's like Harry wasn't the one that did wrong in this situation, because it's like, yeah, because the guy was like, in the aftermath of all that Harry did, like the bombs he dropped in like what information he released, it kind of destroyed some relationships. It's like, no, the torture and terrible methods in which we handle stuff, that is how this country ruined those relationships. Don't put that on Harry for him exposing the truth to some super shady stuff. He's like, he released some really bad stuff. And even Harry said it in the past, like, he's like, it's not like I hate this country. So I'm like, he's like, I'm a patriot. And that's why I'm like, the terrible things that people need to know the truth about what every government should be held for things that they do. It's kind of, Harry's position on it. It's not like he's anti-America or anything like that. You know, he said time and time again how much he loves his country, and so Bishop tried to play that angle of it. But it's like, right. So he's like, right, just bring him back in the fold. He's one of the best hackers around. Then immediately cut to the guy being like, and here's what Harry said about it. And Harry was like, no, he'd rather not sell his soul to work for them again back in military intelligence. And it's just like, Bishop's like, oh, come on, there's got to be another. He's like, nope, unless it's a miracle from God, there is no getting around this. He's kind of screwed. And at that point, that was Bishop's last play. Even Robin had no more plays at that point in time. But despite, early on, Harry was like, he always knew potentially that this day might come. So he did have a backup plan ready. He had a computer stashed away that's going to teach Mel everything that she needs to do, like on the Harry side of things, without him being around. He's like, yeah, because this is just just break glass in case of an emergency type of situation. But he wanted Mel to keep going because he knows that Mel will like drown and get so caught up in all this. It's like, no, I want you to find something to focus on. So keep helping people, because what we do with Robin, it's good, and we help so many people. We can't let them fall to the wayside, like Alma. And to me, that's the tragic situation of like, yes, it's a fictitious thing, but I think, we can all admit that there's some truth to the aspect of, right, like people in particular children falling in between the system, especially with this whole, once again, especially going from like that year of just like, right, this immigration policy, that immigration policy being what it was, and those families getting separated, even though she was like, we're here seeking asylum. I have proof of like, we were being threatened, and I was trying to make because fall however you want to on the immigration side of things. Like, it's just and maybe some people are like, oh, like it's very like liberal of me to be like, oh, like it's just, I don't know, I don't know, politically it's just like I don't get caught up into politics. And yes, I'm like, yeah, it's like, oh, look at me with my liberal like thinking or whatever, but it's just like, I don't know, man. I don't ever think about the like ramifications and stuff like that. Yes, I focus on like, man, it's a human running away from a terrible situation, coming to this country because this is supposed to be a country of like second chances, a place to like make your home. The typical like American dream, you know, how aspiring that is for so many other people, that like this could be a country where they could do stuff where they could talk out of, you know, be like, oh, criticize the government without being worried about the government coming after you for that. Like, not every country has that freedom, you know? So there's certain liberties you have here that you wouldn't be able to get in other countries. I know I'm getting all sappy, like, oh, shut up. I know it's just a sad thing of like, I get too humanly attached, you know, like I get too empathic about the situation. So that's why I'm like, I don't get too caught. Like, to me, I'm like, isn't there a way to like make this work, you know, for people who are just trying to get away, trying to make a better life for themselves? Like, is there a way? And just this episode just sad, just like how everything just faltered and every part of the system fell apart, where it's just like, oh yeah, Pedro, like, obviously they found the place that Pedro was sent to, and Robin goes there being an advocate lawyer. And I love that she's like, right, you want to check my credentials? Call up the detective that's working the case. And then while Dante's on the phone, with the ICE agent's on the phone with Dante, she talks in the background and he just smiles. It's like, yeah, that's it. And he's like, all right. And just when he hangs up, he's smiling like, okay, you could have just at least given me forewarning. But she didn't know she was going to have to play the cop card, but still. But the lady handed over a paper and it's like, what's that? It's like, oh, Pedro's signature. So you got a kid signing something that's written in English, and he's not only, it's like, oh, someone would have explained it to him. Explain it to a 7-year-old. Like, that's like, oh, dude. It's like, she's like, I'm just doing, this is how it works. I'm like, yeah, but come on. Even you gotta, I get, you're like, oh, maybe this is legally how it works. But even I'm like, because I don't know, man. It's still like, how do you break that down to like a kid about essentially signing his rights away? Because that in itself made it harder for his mom to be able to actually find. It's just like the system was so broken and messed up in so many angles and so many twists and turns to it. It's just because like Pedro kept going from one place to another. The next place he ended up going to ended up being a place that like got lit on fire. And it turns out, like, oh, the guy who runs it, Rodrigo, like, used to run for gang. But he was like, when Robin confronted him, he's like, nah, like, I came to this country when I was 15 to get away from the gangs and stuff. Like, I did whatever I could to survive. So he opened that place so that children, he knew that struggle. So he wanted to help out kids that were like him. And he knew Pedro. I mean, he was like, yeah, like, all those kids, like, basically his place got hit by, like, racists being like, oh, there's illegals living in that place? Boom, let's like light the place up. And even at the end, like, despite like the rocky start him and Robin had, he was like, oh, I hope you find that kid. Like, I mean, it sucks, like, you know, because he was trying to do something good. And it's like, right, because that wasn't just some regular place, that was like his house that he was lending out to that particular charity. So but you know, try to find Pedro in the next place, but that place's records got deleted. I'm like, how, what, like, it's like, I guess they were talking about I don't know, because they made it seem like they were trying to track down all, like, the paperwork, because, like, all the digital records were going on. I was like, is it because we're in a digital age that people don't, like, there should be backups to backups to backups, especially with something that's of this nature. Like, this is a governmental run thing, isn't it? So, like, shouldn't there be, like, backups to backups? So, I mean, especially because technology can fail and files can get deleted. So I'm like, wouldn't hard copy, like I said, I don't know whether they're saying they didn't have any hard copies, or was it just like they had the hard copies, but we're still in the process of like siphoning through stuff. Because she's like, because that's also the thing. Robin's like, no, we're looking for a human being, not like an Amazon package. Because just like you're looking for them, like on computer, like, oh, where's this lost package? It's like, no. Like, it's like, but she's like, I'm only been here a month. Pedro was here with, like, what, 6 months ago? I wasn't even working here then. We're slowly picking things up. The moment that guy was named Nathan or whatever was like, oh, hey, I can help out. And I was like, yeah, just give me your number. And I was like, no, I don't trust this guy. And the moment they left, that smile disappeared. I was like, I knew it. So he tried to call Alma up later on, and it's like, okay, so I'll meet me in the spot. I was like, oh, please don't go by yourself. But good thing she didn't. Because she knew, like, no, I can trust Robin and them. She was like, yeah, she probably knew, like, no. Like, I don't know how this whole thing works. So she probably was like, no, I'm going to go to Robin, because whatever the case may be. Because she probably either got an inkling or told Robin. Because it's like, she knows Robin's not a cop. Like, Robin's outside of the system. So she knew she could tell her without there being any repercussions or anything. But yeah, it was a setup. The guy was saying, like, oh, I'm just, like, pointing a gun at, it was trying to scare her into, like, backing away. But it's like, the fact is you brought a gun to this, like, it made it seem like you were going to make her disappear. He was just probably trying to save his own ass, but being like, no, I wasn't going to hurt her or anything. Sadly, his partner ended up killing him, so they did. I forgot how they ultimately were able to back channel some stuff to check out these different places, and ultimately it led to him, like, it turns out this whole thing is a giant adoption scam, and so it's like, right, they check on the family that potentially adopted Pedro. And the thing is, they're not bad people. It's like, oh, we went through a channel. We didn't know it was illegal or anything. Like, Nathan set the whole thing up. He's just a data analyst dude. He's not the actual, like, official worker. So he's like, right, we paid him $10,000 to make this all happen. And it's like, right. But the dad is like, no. Like, the husband's like, if this could be Pedro's mom, like, why don't we, like, you know, what kind of people would we be if he's been, because he had told the story of his mom being, and I was like, why would he tell that? And then the moment he's coming downstairs, I'm like, it's not Pedro, is it? And it's like, no, it's not. Pedro and another kid switched names because the kid was like, if I get adopted, my mom won't be able to find me. And I was like, oh, that's so heartbreaking. And the kid, he switched place was, Manny wanted to get adopted. And he's like, I'm sorry, I lied. And they're like, but everything else about your family, because he's like, I lost my family. He's like, all that's true. And he's like, am I gonna have to leave? And they're like, no, you're with us now. Like, you're like, we'll fight tooth and nail to keep you. You know, I'm like, no, that's beautiful. There's some silver lining to all of this. Like, there's some stuff working out there. But then, you know, even the mom, the wife being like, I hope you find your son. You know, and it's like every angle they've turned to is a dead end. It's just like, it's just, nothing's working out, you know. Even on Dante's end, it's like we can't find out. We hit a dead end, like, on every front. And that's the sad thing, is that it's not just Pedro. It's like there's so many kids that have probably been caught up and sold in this situation too. So ultimately, Robin actually got inspiration from Vi, because she was talking to Vi with, like, right, I can help you, because Vi was like looking for a key or something. It's like for her, like, where her artwork is, where she's going to be like, she needs to take it out so she can put it up for this, like, this art show. And it's like, right, I can always pick the lock for you. I was like, yeah, she could do that for you, couldn't she? But obviously, Robin's at this impasse where it's like, she feels like on both fronts. It's like, I can't help my friend. I'm headed to dead end with, like, what I could do with that. Then there's a whole situation with this muscle boy. It's like, my job is helping people. Like, I'm always the one who can fix things. And it just feels like in this moment, and she just, like, it's like, I've never felt like, she's like, you feel kind of powerless. So, like, that's in that moment. It's like, I can't help anyone right now. And I think especially her anguish over both situations is feeding into each other. The whole not being able to help Pedro thing feeds into the Harry thing, and the Harry thing not being able to help Harry feeds into the Pedro situation. So, but, you know, Vi talks about the fact is, like, you don't give up. You keep going. Like, you know, you'll find a way. There always is a way. That it's like, you came out, I was there the day you were born. You've always been a fighter since the day you came out of your mom, essentially. So, but it's like, right, she was inspired by her being like, right, he couldn't have just walked away. And it's like, right, Pedro couldn't have just walked out of that facility. Like, they would have never just let some kid just randomly walk. He had to be escorted out. And so talking to Manny, the person that was there was that ICE agent that Robin met earlier in the episode. So, right, he's part of the scheme. He's the partner. So they didn't hack traffic cameras because they don't have Harry to do that. They did a very lo-fi thing of just like, right, they just jacked into his car's GPS on where he had been. And you know that probably bothered the hell out of Mel, where the guy was like, hey, I just want to say thank you. She's like, yeah, no problem. And she's kind of looking like, you bastard. Like, I know what you're up to. Not only did you murder a guy, to be fair, the guy you murdered was your partner in this terrible stuff, but you're kidnapping kids, because it turns out they were, like, making kids work at a sweatshop, which even Mel was like, you think that happens in other countries, you never think that happens in the U.S. It's like, Robin's like, no, it happens here. It's just that the people involved are undocumented people, so it's even rarer to find out about it because of that. I was like, gee, oh man, because like, you think of that does seem like, oh, that there's no way that happens in the U.S. You wouldn't think it would. Like, there's other places you're like, it most likely happens there, which, you know. But ultimately they ended up tracking down the facility. Robin was like, I'm giving you another way to do the right thing here, and ended up taking everybody out. Now, to be fair, everyone got shot in that situation, so I think everyone walked away dead. So, that's the end result of that. But it wasn't just Pedro she found other kids too. So being able to reunite Alma with Pedro after everything, and because they were victims of that law, like I didn't know this was a real law, but I guess like because they get a visa automatically because they were victims of this system. So it's like, right, I'm gonna get you in touch with like immigration lawyer to kind of help you out with everything. So they get to stay, till they, get enough time to stay here to figure like, I think, a permanent residency type of situation. So things kind of worked out on that front. But earlier, sadly, the Harry and Mel thing was complicated because Bishop played his last card, which even he was like, I need you to convince Harry to like work for military intelligence again. He was like, yes. And she's like, I can't, he won't. He's like, you need to convince him. Like, this whole thing about selling his soul and blah, 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 it's foolish. It's like, no, that's the thing I love about Harry. He's a good-natured person. The fact of the matter is he sticks up for what he believes in. He doesn't, and I would never, like, if I asked him to do this, I'd be asking him to compromise who he is. Like, even if I want him back, he'd never take this deal. He'd never do that, and I love him for it. Like, that type of good-natured person, that person is the one who decided to help you regardless of anything. So Bishop's just like, without this is like we're out of options here. And he listens in on Mel and Harry because Harry is about to get transferred. And it's just like, he's like, right, you did everything you could. This, no matter what, I love you. I'm, happy to have you as my wife, and she's happy to have him as her husband. And it's kind of sad that this is the end of the road. It's like, this can't just be the end. But Bishop is nearby, and he's just heartbroken by it. So he calls him one last favor. And so it turns out Harry does end up getting released. And it's Bishop called in his golden ticket, his one get out of jail free card, and he used it for Harry. And it's like, yeah, don't let them know I did this because, I don't want them to think I'm going soft. And it's like, going soft? You've always been a softie, essentially, But also, it's like, right, the deal here was Harry's not allowed to touch a computer again. It's like, what? You can't? It's like, no, he better not even check his bank account online because they will come for him and they will lock him up and throw away the keys again. So either Harry is going to get someone else, either he's going to be even more careful from now on, or he's going to be try and hook them up with another tech guy, or like he'll be nearby and make it so that Mel does all the hacking and stuff like that from now on. I don't know, because apparently like all their computers, all their hardware and stuff was taken by like the feds and stuff. So they're kind of, what happens there, they probably have to turn to another hacker maybe to handle stuff so that Harry doesn't touch all this, but he does get let go, so he is able to come back to the land of the living, so it all worked out. So no like, having to live in fear. I mean, granted, he just can't touch a computer, but he does have some form of a normal life back now, no having to hide anymore, so that all works out. So that's definitely going to be interesting to see how this operation works going forward, how they handle all that. I did like, Harry did set up the computer to be like, right, I gave like Mel all the tools needed to like handle things, and he was like, yeah, sadly I won't be able to see you, I won't be able to geek out over you like doing all this nerdy stuff. But it's like, well, he now has the opportunity because he's probably gonna have to watch, and he's probably like, oh, you should do it. She's like, no, don't touch a computer, I'll do it, you tell me what to do and I'll do it. He's like, yeah, babe, but wouldn't it be faster if I just know? I could see some stuff like that happening in the future, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see where things kind of go from there. I talked about it a little bit before. Go ahead and bring it up here too, since we are bringing up Bishop. I've not caught the latest on the Chris Knopf situation. Once again, there are allegations against him. The last time I looked into the story was talks about a fourth person coming forward. So I don't know. I'm not saying he's guilty of it. I'm just putting the news out there. You determine how you feel about it. I was curious how the show was going to respond. Like, that was like, I think the news about the allegations first sprouting up, like, I think that all came up publicly, like, maybe like a week or two ago, maybe. So that's why I was surprised to see him in this episode so much. I was like, because I was curious, like, how they're going to handle it. But it's like, right, they already filmed these by the time that happened, like, by the time the news had come out. Because I think most shows do this. I know the CW does it, but I think a lot of shows, like, they block out 5 episodes ahead. So, like, when you're watching something, it's like, you're guaranteed at least the next 5 episodes of something. Typically. Not always. But that's usually, they do things in, like, 5-episode chunks. So, like, the next 4 episodes after this might already be done or in the process of being done. I don't know. I'm sure every show's got its own schedule and stuff like that. But I'm just curious, like, how they're gonna, what, you know, are they gonna, like, keep going with Chris Noth? Like, I'm sure, like, public opinion as well as just legally what happens is going to, like, determine how they handle that going forward. Will they end up recasting Bishop? Will they kill Bishop off? I would think they would recast if the situation calls for it, because, well, they went through the trouble of introducing Bishop's son into the story, but that could just be a thing of, like, nah, they could always pull the ripcord and just be like, yeah, he's dead, and his son pops up, it's like, that was my dad, wasn't it? It's like, right, my dad's going, my mom's going, and now my dad, I never really got to know him, he's going down to some, they could always do that, so, just something to put out there, like, you know, I'm not telling you how to feel about it, I'm not saying whether you should believe he's guilty, you should not believe, I'm just presenting the information. It's just one of those things of, it's an elephant in the room, you have to talk about it. So that's just, you know, my piece on it, and that's, you know, like I said, it's up to you to look into it and determine where you stand on the subject. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about. Till next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.